निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः tasmai shri gurave namaha. All right, so now for verse 1, please repeat. Vedo nityamadhiyatam, Vedo nityamadhiyatam, tadudidam, karma svanushthiyatam, svanushthiyatam. Tene shasya vidhiyatam, shasya vidhiyatam, apachitihi, apachitihi, kamye matistyajatam, matistyajatam, papogaf paridhuyatam, papogaf paridhuyatam, bhavasukhe, bhavasukhe. Doshonusandhiyatam, doshonusandhiyatam, atmecha vyavasiyatam, necha vyavasiyatam, nijagrahat, nijagrahat, turnam vinirgamyatam, turnam vinirgamyatam, sangat satsu vidhiyatam, sangat satsu vidhiyata bhagavato bhaktir dridadhiyatam bhaktir dridadhiyatam shantyadif parichiyatam shantyadif parichiyatam dridataram dridataram karmashu santyajyatam Shusantyajata sadvidvanupasripyatam vidvanupasripyatam pratidinam pratidinam tatpaduka sevyatam tatpaduka sevyatam brahmaikaksaramarthyatam brahmaikaksaramarthyatam shrutishiro Vakyam samakarnyatam Vakyarthascha vicharyatam Vakyarthascha vicharyatam Shrutishiraf Pakshas samashriyatam Pakshas samashriyatam Dustarkat suviramyatam Dustarkat suviramyata Shrutimatas Tarkonusandhiyatam Brahmasmiti vibhavyatam Brahmasmiti vibhavyatam Aharahar Garvav parityajyatam Garvav parityajyatam Deheham matirujyatam Deheham matirujyatam Buddhajanair Vadav parityajyatam. All right, so we'll go back to 1, 2, and 3 and chant it together. Vedo nityamadhiyatam taduditam karma svanushthiyatam tene shasya vidhiyatam apachitihi kamye matistyajatam papogaf paridhuyatam bhavasukhe doshonusandhiyatam Atmecha vyavasiyatam nijagrahat turnam vinirgamyatam Sangat satsu vidhiyatam bhagavato bhaktirdridadhiyatam shantyadif parichiyatam dridataram karmashu santyajyatam sadvidvanupasripyatam pratidinam tatpaduka sevyatam brahmaikaksharamardhyatam shrutishiro vakyam samakarnyatam vakyarthasya vicharyatam shrutishirah pakshas samashriyatam dustarkat suviramyatam shrutimatastarkonusandhiyatam brahmasmiti vibhavyatam aharahar garvah parityajyatam deheham atirujyatam buddhajanair vadav parityajyatam. All right, those lines were long. So, now, we had seen in verse number 3, there is a systematic approach to mananam. Systematic approach to mananam. There are 3 main lines that we have to pay attention to. 3 main lines. First one is Shruti Shiraf Paksha Samashriyatam. Standing on the side of the ultimate end of the Shrutis, I take refuge in that. Standing in that side, what do I do then? Dustarkat suviramyatam. Dustarka, false logics, I address them and in fact stay away from them. I do not follow along with dustarkas. And how am I supposed to do that? This comes a third sentence here. Shruti matas tarkonusandhiyatam. Using the logic presented by the Shrutis, I address those false logics. These are the 3 main principles of mananam. Now, when we heard Shravanam, the Mahavakya, saying, you are that substratum, you are that reality, Tattvam Asi, or Jiva Brahma Aikya. That's the formula behind any Mahavakya. Once we've heard this, it is not experienced as true. How can that ultimate substratum, which is one without a second, be the same as this world of experience that has plurality? How can that which is the ultimate cause be the effect? How can that which is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-pervasive be the same as this individual that seems to be limited of ignorance and have limited shaktis or abilities? How can that be the same? So the vakyas are not clear to us. So Shravana only removes abhavana. Bhava means to be, abhavana means is not be. That's a weird English translation. It is not, meaning the absence of that knowledge is removed. Why? Because knowledge was given through Shravana. But what does mananam do? Doubts, conflicts, and contradictions are resolved through thinking. So asambhavana is resolved at this point in mananam. So when we talk about these 3 statements, Shruti, let me go back to this. Shruti Shiro Paksha Samashriyatam, to take refuge in the Shrutis. And then the third line, Shruti, I thought I memorized this, hang on. The Shruti Matas Tarkonu Sandhiyatam. These first and last ones seem to be the same. Why have they given it twice? Is it the same? Is there some subtlety between the 2? So this is what we were looking at last time. So what I like to think about is when we see these Mahavakyas, Tattvam Asi, how do I resolve those contradictions? Every single darshana had a different idea, different way of interpreting that statement. I have to stand by Vedanta itself. So what were the 6 darshanas that we saw? First one was Nyaya, Vaisheshika. Then Sankhya and Yoga. Then Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa. Those were the 6. So each one has its style or forte in how they analyze those Mahavakyas. Nyaya and Vaisheshika, they're best known for their logical approach. We talk about like tarkas. How do I properly construct a logic? How do I go from one logic to an example and use that example to properly justify the statement? These styles of logical arguments, that's what Nyaya and Vaisheshika are known for. Then Sankhya and Yoga, what are they known for? Application, sadhana perspective. How do I actually practice and evolve in the right direction? They were really good at that aspect. Now Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa versus Purva Mimamsa. Okay, Mimamsa means near the end portions. Now those end portions are actually divided into two. Purva means before. Uttara means afterward. So in the ending there are two parts. Previous part, what are they focused on? Karma Kanda. When I perform actions, what is the nature of action? What is actually being controlled in action? How can I control results through those actions? How do I perform rituals? How can I earn punya in this here and hereafter in Swarga? All of that is accounted for in Karma Kanda, which is known as Purva Mimamsa. Then finally, what's the Uttara Mimamsa? This is when we are Vedanta, Advaita, Upanishad knowledge is Uttara Mimamsa. Now, when this statement is said, Shruti Shiraf Paksha Samashriyatam. Paksha, the side of the Shrutis, you stand by that. What are they asking us to do then? Stand firmly in the knowledge of the Uttara Mimamsa or Vedanta or Upanishad. Stand by that. Okay, then after having stood on this side, how do I understand that I've challenged that, I've really digested that standpoint? I gotta go test it. Last time we had taken the analogy, when you're trying to plant a post, you dig it deep, keep it firm, and then how do you make sure it's actually strong? You go shake it a little. You gotta go throw some questions at it, test it, see if it still holds true. So stand on Shruti Paksha side, then address the dustarkas. So I'm just giving an outline. We'll actually go into detail and look at some examples today and really clarify this. Stand on this side, test it out by addressing the false logics that are presented. Then how do I answer those questions? How do I resolve that saying, no, this is how there's fallacies in your logic. How do I address this? I use the styles and logic given by the Shrutis itself too. So that's when the third line comes in. Shruti mataha tarka anusandiyatam. Not only do I stand on the Shruti standpoint, but I also use the logic they gave and address all the dustarkas that are given. So it's just a quick outline. Mananam is these three things. Stand on the Paksha of Shruti, address the dustarkas that are on the other side, use the logic from this Upanishad and answer those. That's the style of Mananam. So let's see it in actual application. Now, when we see Tattvam Asi, you are that. And especially when we say Tvam, you are that Atman. These are statements that are made. But how do I understand it? So when we look at the 6 darshanas, some say Atma is inert. It doesn't have a consciousness. Others will say Atma is consciousness. Some will say Atma is only one. Others will say Atma is many. And one other is, what is the relationship between mind and Atma? Because I'm used to being this brain and this consciousness. My thoughts is what I'm really constantly feeling. Some say mind gives consciousness to Atma. Others say Atma gives consciousness to the mind. All right, these are all these darshanas. How do we navigate all of this? So again, stand from the point of view of the Shrutis, look at the logic and use the logic to address them. Okay. Now, let me come back and look at dustarka. There are a couple of things. It's not just false logic. There's some nuances to it, and that will actually help us understand what sort of strategies we're applying. When we see the word dustarka, dus plus tarka. Dus stands for dushta. Now, usually I think in any language, Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, correct me if I'm wrong, dushta is actually a word that we tend to use, right? Dushta is dushta purusha, dushta man, he's wicked. That's the instinct we have when we think wicked logic. They're out there to get us. They are going to manipulate us. That's the feeling that comes, but that's not the real definition here. Dushta, there are two aspects, two fallacies in that logic that's given. One is abhasaha, and the second one is shruti viruddha. What does this mean? Abhasa. It seems to be logical. It sounds logical, but it's not. Then the second one, shruti viruddha, is those statements are actually against what the Upanishad is saying. So there are two errors we have to correct. So let's now look at, so let's now try an example. This is now dustarka. Dustarka in terms of abhasa. It seems logical, but it's really not. What is the example? One darshana says, there has to be many different atmas. It's not one atma. Okay, so let's go through the process. What is Shruti's standpoint? Ekam advayam. There can only be one atma. That is a standpoint we have to prove. So now let's look at the dustarka. How are they giving us seeming illogical things? They'll say, let's look at our experience. The joys and sorrows I have is not the same as the joys and sorrows you have. When a same object is in front of me, you might like it, but I might hate it. Because each one of us has a different experience, therefore our Atma is also different. This is the kind of logic they present to prove there are many Atmas. Now, this is the Dustarka. What do we now have to do? Third step in our Mananam. Shruti mataha tarka anusandhyatam. Use the logic given in the Upanishads. So there is in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there's one line that comes up saying, Kamaha sankalpaha, desires and resolutions. Vichikitsa, doubts. Shraddha, ashraddha, faith and non-faith. Dhritihi, persistence. Adhritihi, the opposite of persistence. Then hrihi, shame. Bhihi, fear. Dhihi, thinking. So they're giving variations, right? It's really fun to chant that one. Kama, sankalpa, vichikitsa, shraddha, ashraddha, dhritihi, adhritihi, hrihi, dihi, bihi. All of these things are iti tat sarvam manaha eva. This is a statement given in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad saying all of these variations actually belong to the mind and not the Atma. Shruti mataha tarka anusandhyatam. Now we have to take this and apply to that. Here, the most important thing is these variations belong to the mind and not the Atma. Therefore, you can have a variety of minds, but you can have one Atma. Therefore, I can say, no, just because you have variations in experiences doesn't mean there's variations in entity. So for example, I am one person. In the morning, I am a monster because I don't want to get up early in the morning. By the time I get to nighttime, I'm great. You can have great conversations, midnight philosophical discussions we can have at midnight. I'm that kind of person, but it's still me. I have variations, but I'm still the same entity. Mine can have variations, but that doesn't mean my identity is different. So this is how we go through. Stand from Shruti's standpoint, look at the illogic, see if it's actually logical or not, and address the logic presented by the Shrutis and cut it down. This is addressing abhasa of dustarka. Now, what's the other one? Here's another example. This is Shruti Viruddha. It is against the statements of the Shrutis. Now, someone who read Tattvam Asi, one time they said, no, there's a grammatical error in the reading of these Mahavakyas. You read it wrong. It is actually not Tattvam Asi, it's Atattvam Asi. And you're like, where did you get this from? How did you do this? He said, okay, listen. This Tattvam Asi comes from Chandogya Upanishad, right? And who are the Guru and Shishya talking in this Upanishad? The student is Shveta Ketu. Pay attention to that last letter. Shveta Ketu. Now, when we actually read the Upanishad, if you read any big text in Sanskritam, do you not notice that they're like these long lines? They're like so many words put under one big line. This is a style where Shastras or Sanskritam writes in compounds. You put many different words together and then you get meanings. So here in Chandogya Upanishad, they saw that there's one big compound saying Shveta Keto Tattvam Asi. It's all under one compound. This is the word I see. They're saying you're using false grammar, and Sandhi is to break those compounds properly. You did the wrong thing when reading. It should be Shveta Ketu Atattvam Asi. Not Shveta Ketu Tattvam Asi. You did it wrong. Somebody will use that kind of logic to make statements that are completely against Shruti. What do we have to do? Say, Baba, no. You got your grammar correct. I was wrong, sorry. It is Shveta Ketu Tattvam Asi. So where is this proof? Where do I take the strength of this? There are these styles of Vedic chanting called Patantaras, or, it's slipping my mind right now. Okay, I'll get the name later. But Ganapata, there we go, sorry. Now it came to my mind. Ganapatas. What they do is they take any mantra and they'll have this mathematical formula where they'll go back 5 letters, go forward 3 letters, go back 5 more, then go forward 3 letters. And like this, there's a full chanting or Vedic chanting that comes out of it. Really, if you were to think like a programmer, especially when you're writing language, do they not write systems within coding that acts as redundancies to make sure that there's no error in coding? Same thing is done with these Ganapatas. So we learned one during the Vedanta course. We didn't learn all of them. But it's a combination of letters where you go forward, backwards, forward, backwards, forward, backwards, and they follow the Sandhi rules so that you are confirmed you're breaking the words in the right places. That is a confirmation of how these Mahavakyas are broken up. There's one for each of those Upanishads too. So those confirm whether it is a Tattvamasi or Tattvam Asi. So you said, no, there is rules. Patanjali ji, when he wrote his Sanskritam grammar rules and all that, he was sure about what he was doing. You have it wrong. Now, there's other styles where they'll say it's not Tattvam Asi. They're compounds that imply certain meanings. You can say, I went to the forest, I went into the forest, I went on top of the forest, I went before the forest. These, what do you call it, conjuncts? Prepositions, thank you for that. Prepositions can change. In Sanskritam, they're built into the word. So when you see the compound, Tattvam Asi, some say, it is Tasya Tvam Asi. Tasya means you're part of that. Others will say, Tasmin Tvam Asi. You are in that. Why am I bringing this up? There's a big question that comes up saying, what is the difference between Dvaita, Advaita, and Vishishta Advaita? It comes from somewhere like this. Some say that Atma and Brahma are not one and the same. Some say Atma and Brahma, they are separate. Atma is lesser, Brahma is greater. Atma is meant to worship Brahman. This is Dvaita standpoint. We are all dasas. Vashishta Advaita says, no, we are a part of that whole. I am an amsha. All of us put together make up that totality, we're just a part. Then Advaita says, that cannot be. We are all that in essence. How can the wave be separate from the ocean? We're all made of H2O. How can we be a part or worshipful? How can the wave be worshipful of the ocean? How can the wave only be a part of the ocean? I can't separate wave from ocean. So Tattvam Asi is Advaita. The point here is, when we are doing Mananam and we hear the word Tattvam Asi, sometimes we don't even know what questions to ask. Guru said Tattvam Asi. Guru said, I am that Brahman. Okay, I'm done. Brain shuts down. But we still don't experience that. I don't even know how to start asking questions. That's why the other darshanas are required. They're a way for us to start thinking deeper. What is the relationship between Atma and Brahma, and how can I prove it? You have all of these variations. What would the Shastras say to correct all of these false accusations or false logics? So, Shruti Mataha Tarka Anusandhiyatam. So it is useful to use all of the other darshanas, take the best that they have, you stand in Shruti and address those issues. Now, if you're ready, there's one more example we can take for analysis. This is using Shruti as logic. All right, so bear with me a little bit here. The example is, or the question we're trying to address is, how can existence be the ultimate cause? Because don't we say Brahman is that ultimate cause? It is a causeless cause. These are statements that are made. How can this be true? We say Brahman is Sat. Brahman is that ultimate cause. Why? How does this work? This is what we're going to investigate right now. Okay? So there's an example that's taken. Look at clay versus the figurines. So from clay, you can make a little horse, or on Ganesh Chaturthi, you make a little Ganeshi. On Shivratri, you make a little Shivalinga. You make all of these different figurines, but they're all made from clay. We say that what is actually real in those between the two? Are the figurines real, or is clay real? The figurine, what is its cause? Clay. So I'm asking rhetorical questions. Let me answer them, right? The cause of the figurine is clay alone. I can't have a figurine without clay. If I had a Ganeshji and I removed all the clay from Ganeshji, will Ganeshji still remain? No. It doesn't have its own existence. We say Ganeshji is just a name and form. The true cause is clay. So here's one more example. Bear with me. I have a handkerchief, right? A piece of cloth. What can I say is the cause of this handkerchief? What is the existence principle in this handkerchief? What is it made from? Cotton, right? So we say cotton is the cause of the handkerchief. One more. Steel bowl. What is the cause of a steel bowl? Steel, right? So one pattern we're picking up is that which pervades that object is its cause. Clay pervades through all of those figurines, therefore clay is the cause of those figurines. Cotton is pervading through the handkerchief, therefore cotton is the cause of that handkerchief. Are we getting there? That's pretty simple so far. Now let's add the next layer. Can I say that the cotton is the cause of the steel bowl? Is cotton the cause of the steel bowl? Not that hard. No. Why? What's our reason? Steel bowl is not pervaded by cotton. So cotton cannot be the cause of or the existence of steel bowl. Okay. Now what's so significant about this? Then cotton cannot be the ultimate cause. The principle is that which pervade is the cause. If cotton cannot pervade through steel bowl, then cotton cannot be the ultimate cause. So now I have to switch questions. Is there something that pervades both the cloth and the steel bowl and the clay? Is there something that exists through it? What would you say? Being modern scientists, what would you say? What is that thing that pervades both the clay, the steel, the cotton? Any guesses? Huh? Good. That's a good next step, right? Atoms. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Let's broaden it a little bit. Let's say atoms. This entire thing is made of atoms. In fact, Nyaya Darshana sticks to this answer. It is material. They have different vocabulary, but let's hold on to atoms. Okay. So then everything is made of atoms. Is there an object in this universe that is not made from atoms? Is there, what would you say? Space, or more specifically, vacuum, right? Vacuum is not made from atoms. So now we can't say atoms are the cause. Now, actually we broke science. And if you look at quantum physics, they're coming around to that idea too. They say atoms are not the fundamental element in this universe. There's something called the God particle, right? So I'm like, haha, Vedanta did it first. So now let's continue with that investigation. Is there something that pervades both the vacuum and the rest of the material world? Oh, now we're getting subtler. Something that pervades even space itself. What is the substance or cause of space? Now we've come to a really subtle realm. We say it is existence itself. Existence exists in vacuum. Existence exists in space. Existence exists in atoms. Okay, now I cannot find ultimate question now. Does non-existence exist? That's a non-existent cannot not exist. Even the fact that I'm theorizing this idea shows that it is based off of existence itself. I literally cannot conceptualize non-existence on its own. There is no other thing other than existence itself. So, existence pervades everything, therefore it is that ultimate cause. This is the kind of logic that the Upanishads walk us through. Same thing can be done with consciousness. Where am I getting this from? Brahman is Sat Chit Ananda. We just looked at Sat, existence principle. Now in Drigdrishya Vivek, they do a similar exercise with consciousness or awareness. How do I know that this world is, I'm aware of this world? Because my eyes see it, my senses see it. Okay, how do I know my senses are seeing it? What's behind the senses that give consciousness to that sense organ? We would say the mind. Then what's behind the mind? The intellect. What's behind the intellect? What is that which gives consciousness to this? So that, not Dridrishya Vivek, Kena Upanishad. By what entity does it lend itself to bring that awareness? What is that ultimate cause? So these are styles of logic that the Upanishad presents because we want to constantly confirm that I am that principle. I am Sat Chit Ananda. How? Why? I want to remove all doubts from this. So, again, to remind ourselves, there is, stand from the standpoint of the Mahavakyas, look at other standpoints that may bring up doubts. Address them. Not all logic is actually logical if we really dug into it. And we have to make sure that any statements that is contradictory to Shrutis, we're able to resolve that. And I take the help of Shrutis or the Upanishads itself. No one else can actually walk me through this kind of logic. Only Shrutis can. Now, having come to this point, Mananam culminates when we have no more doubts. There is not a single piece of logic you can present to me that will convince me that I am not this Brahman. I know for sure I am Brahman. There's no fallacies in that logic. I am sure of it. I am clear. I have perfect conviction. But does that mean that I'm able to immediately have self-realization? I get it. There's no more doubts. I am realized. Does that happen? No. In fact, we're only halfway through Sadhana Panchakam. There's still more to go. What is the problem now? What am I stuck with now? This sense that even though I know, I don't feel it. I'm not able to experience it. I know for sure I am Brahman. I have no more doubts. Why is it that I'm still not able to feel it? So Swami Sarveshanji had a very important phrase that I've memorized in my head now. Erroneous, habitual thought patterns. That is the problem that remains. Erroneous, habitual thought patterns. What do I mean by this? Now, when we say habitual, we're not just talking about our day-to-day habits. I have a bad habit of getting up late in the morning. I have a bad habit of eating. Thought patterns. So what are we looking at now? I have for so long been identified and thinking as if I am this limited individuality, BMI, for so long. Not just this lifetime, but for many, many, many lifetimes. I have the habit of thinking I am this BMI, erroneous, habitual thought patterns. That I have to now undo. I have to get rid of this habit. How do you get rid of that habit? You introduce a contradictory habit. If I have a habit of sleeping late, what's the contradictory habit I have to introduce to overcome that? Get up early. If I have a bad habit of talking, what do I have to do? Develop the habit of not talking. Use the opposite habit and develop that. So in the same way, I have to counteract this idea that I am a limited entity. What will I say now? I am unlimited. I am that real substratum. I am not this, I am that. I am not this, I am that. Where am I going? This is what happens in the seat of meditation, nididhyasana. No more logic, no more listening to shastras. Now this is within my own self, fixing my own habitual problems. So the best way to experience this in a worldly sense is when we talk about names. We talk about names, and I have, definitely have gone through that in the recent year. This year, having my name changed, it has given me a good test drive. So let's take, for example, a child that is born to a mother. Sorry, where are my notes now? There we go. So when we have a newborn child, does that child automatically come with a name? No, of course not. They're ambiguous for like the first 7 days, 2 weeks. What do? We have a nama smarana or samskara, the naming ceremony. That's when the whole congregation comes together, mother and father look through Vishnu Sahasranama or Lalita Sahasranama, pick a good name, and said, I will give you this name. So let's say, for example, they were ardent devotees of Tirupati Venkateshwara and said, I will call you Balaji as a given name. As soon as that nama samskara happens, does that child now suddenly recognize himself as Balaji? No. What does the mother have to do after the ceremony is done? You are Balaji. You are Balaji. This is Mama. This is Papa. You are Balaji. She has to do it again and again and again. Eventually, she takes the child in front of the mirror and says, this is Mama, this is Papa, and this is... And the child, you have to encourage them to say, I am Balaji. Now, it takes practice. It's a habit that forms. Over time, as a kid now goes to school, he has become so identified with that name. If someone were to use that name as an insult, he gets all angry. You're Balaji the Budgie, you are Balaji the Budgie. And then he comes running home. Mama, they're bullying me. They call me Budgie all the time. Why did you give me this name, Balaji? They get real angry. Why? Because they've identified with that name. Insult to the name is insult to me. That's how strong that identification has become. Now, over time, to undo this is what I had to go through now. Having a name change, I now have to identify with a whole new name. So at first, when people called me by my old name, I would respond quickly. I wouldn't even realize they called me by my old name. That's how identified I was. When someone calls me by the new name, I was like, who's this Sanjana? Sanjana, is there someone in this room? Please raise your hand. It's like, dude, they're talking about you. So it takes me a while. My favorite part is WhatsApp. WhatsApp really helped. Why? Because they write, Hari Om Sanjana Ji. I'm like, oh yeah, that's my name. And through all of my email accounts, I have to go and actually change my name. And it's a repetition of habit. To see my new name is the abhyasa I have to do. Now, hopefully, I have let go of my identification of the old name and I've taken up identification with a new name. This is also temporary. When one day I get sannyasi, they'll give me a new name again. So I have to do this all over again. But this is good habit. This is good practice. Because this was just the worldly body with a worldly name. We have to undo this for our very identity of who I am. I am not BMI, I am Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. Soham. I am that substratum. So nididhyasana is correcting the erroneous habitual thought pattern of who I am. Now, one thing I will make a comment, this is a bit of a side tangent here. Please do not get consumed or influenced by the modern definition of meditation. They have borrowed that name and misused it like crazy, and we ourselves have become confused about what is meditation. What are the common uses? Every morning, sit in a quiet place, breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. And be calm and happy. You are now practicing 5 minutes of meditation. There's an app for aided meditation on there, and they do the same thing here. Is that meditation? No. In fact, if you're using your breath, it is called pranayama. You are benefiting calmness, you are experiencing a relative unagitated state of mind, but you're using the breath. That is the science of pranayama. Okay, you said forget the breath. I will think about positivity. I will think about that focal point of a flame. I think there's this exercise somewhere in India, right? You have to like stay focused on a specific flame for as long as you can. That's mental concentration. In other words, that's called upasana. What I'm staying focused on is an object of concrete qualities, and I shall stay concentrated on that. That is called upasana. That is not called nididhyasana or meditation. If you've looked at our shastras now, Sadhana Panchakam, we've come all the way to this point. I've completed brahmacharya ashrama. I've purified myself through karma yoga. I have become concentrated, and my bhakti to Bhagavan has become fortified. I've come surrendered to the Guru. I've asked the Guru, what does the Upanishads have to say? Who am I? I've come all this way. My meditation cannot be a step prior. It cannot be pranayama. It cannot be upasanas. That is done with. This is the ultimate state of changing my identification as who I am. So meditation is not something easy, and it is not something that anyone can do. There's a lot of work that has to be done. So let us not mistake, Brahmachari, Swamiji, can you teach us meditation? Can we do 5 minutes of meditation during satsang? Can we have this as a new practice or something? No. Until and unless we progress up until this point, until we've studied the shastras, really come to confirm all doubts, remove all those doubts, until that point, I'm not ready for meditation. Nididhyasana is what I'm not ready for. Now, when we look, there's one example that came to my mind when I was reading this. Does anyone know Nirvana Shatkam? It is a stotram that's given often. Nirvana Shatkam. I forgot to bring the printout, so please bear with me. I'm like looking on my phone. I feel like a bad brahmachari. So, here in Nirvana Shatkam, it starts with Mano Buddhya Ahankara Chittani Naham Nacha Shrotra Jihve Nacha Grana Netre. So there's a beautiful melody to it too. I can't sing that well, I'll just try one line. Mano Buddhya Ahankara Chittani Naham. And then it's a beautiful song. Many people use it like it's a bhajan. While they're cooking, while they're arguing with them, it's like a song that gets stuck in their head. They say, oh, this is such a beautiful bhajan, let's sing it. If you look at the lyrics to it, the actual meaning of it, it says, I am not the mind, nor the intellect, nor the ego, ahankara. I am not any of these sense organs. I am not the ears. I am not the tongue. I am not the nose. Further, in the next lines, I am not the 5 sheets. I am not the pranas. I am not the speech. I am not the hands. And then even more, I am not hatred. I am not attachment. Best part, I am not dharma. I am not adharma. I am not even dharma, artha, kama. I am not moksha. Who actually is gaining moksha? The body is 5 elements playing among the 5 elements. The self is already that substratum. Who's gaining moksha? It is this illusory entity called jiva that seems to be misidentified with who they are. I am not even moksha itself. Nirvana Shatkam is the most powerful aids to meditation, aids to nididhyasanam. This is not just any other stotram or bhajan that we can sing. These are aids to meditation. In Vivekachudamani, around 240 or some, there's about 20 verses that are titled as aids to meditation. I am not this, I am not that, I am not this, I am not that. Neti, neti, na iti, na iti, na iti, na iti. It is a habit I am developing mentally to counteract the identity that I am this body, mind, and intellect. Very subtle practice that has to be saved until we have clarity and conviction. Only then can I commit to being that true essence of who I am. So when we see in Sadhana Panchakam at this point, this is what that line, Brahma smiti vibhavyatam, is all about. This is entering the nididhyasana state of sannyasi ashram. Brahma asmi iti vibhavyatam. Bhava. This is who I am. What is my bhava? Who am I? Brahma asmi. I am Brahman. This is the ultimate state that we reach to, the culmination. We're reaching near the end. Again, I come back. We're only on verse 3. We have 2 more. You said there are 40. We only went through 20. What is the rest of Sadhana Panchakam all about? What comes next? Even in this highest state of nididhyasana, the most advanced seeker, they are still at risk for that stupid little ego to stand up and say, I'm still here. Why? This is called sattvic ahankara. Look at me. I am an advanced sadhaka. I am very intellectual. I have read all of the Upanishad. I know. I have no doubts. That is part of the sadhana. But see how the ego can take that up as its own pride? In fact, the next sentence we see, the next instruction is, ahara. Give up that pride. Next one. Give up the delusory misconceptions that I am this body. Stop the tendencies to argue with wise men. It's like, did we just go backwards in our advice? What's going on? Up until now, this is what we should be doing. From this point onwards are all the warnings. You may fall off the bandwagon in these steps. At this point, you may fall off because of this reason. At that point, you may fall off because of that reason. How do I make sure I have safeguards in all the different places that the ego can come up? That is what we will see in the next couple verses, and how to maintain that diligence along this path. So half is just the instructions. The other half is warnings. So it goes to show how powerful is this ego for it to rise up. Now, there's one analogy that I wanted to bring back as a way of connecting to the dangers of the ego. The story of Sugriva and Bali. What's the most annoying question people ask about that story? Why did Ramchandraji shoot Bali in the back? I thought he was a kshatriya who's supposed to face his enemy eye to eye. Is he cheating death? He's not a kshatriya. Why did he shoot Bali in the back? Okay, what does Bali actually represent in this? He represents the ego. And what was the superpower that Bali had? Does anyone remember this? What was his shakti or boon that he had? Exactly. As soon as he faces an enemy, he automatically absorbs half the power. This is what the ego does. Look at how in the end, saying that know the logic of the Shrutis so you can address all dustarkas. Then in the seat of meditation, become an advanced seeker in seeking your own self. What will the ego come and say? I am a scholar. I am an advanced seeker. I do nididhyasanam for 10 hours. I'm working on my 11th hour. What has he done? Taken half of the concept and made it his own. Now, if you were to try to address the ego head on, will you be successful? I'll keep absorbing half of the strength, half of the approaches. Somewhere or the other, there will be some false thing. So you have to find this roundabout way to come from behind without it even knowing you're trying to annihilate it, be able to come from around and correct it there. So that example I gave in today's assembly, the phrase selfless desires follows that technique. If I told the desires, you are not allowed to be here anymore. Ego, you're not allowed to be here. What will it do, the consuming? Okay, I am not here. Who's speaking? Ego still. This is such a complicated fight with the ego. I have to find ways to go around it for it to not recognize its own self and kill it right then and there. So Bali represents that ego. Ramchandra ji did exactly what he was supposed to address that issue. He had to come from behind and kill him. That was the only way. So there's just an analogy to keep in mind as we're going through this. We have completed the Nididhyasanam state. What are all the places this ego can come up, and how do I address this? This is what we will see in the next coming verses. So with that, I thank you for this opportunity to reflect. I hope it wasn't too complicated or too subtle. I think we got a sample of what Tarka is all about. So with that, I will see you all next week. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.